Hey guys, you're listening to the Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast, where we talk about uncaging your divinely gifted wild heart to be as free and expansive as you were born to be. My goal is to use our stories, guest interviews, and your questions to tease out what has been keeping your wild heart under wraps. I'm your host, Mielle Fox, and together we will shatter the myths of our old stories to set our wild heart free. So thanks for choosing you and showing up today. I just want to give you a little introduction into my guest today, Dawn Renee Bova. She is a soulful artist, a teacher, and an author who's making waves with her intuitive painting and heartfelt expression. She is the host of her own podcast, Catch Some SoulShine, where she shares her wisdom, insights, and healing practices with fellow artists and creatives who are shining bright despite life's challenges. As a nurse practitioner specializing in recovery and mental health wellness, she's a compassionate advocate for those impacted by substance abuse, mental health illness, and grief. Her faith is an integral part of her journey. She believes that art is a very powerful tool for spiritual growth and connection. Her experiences with substance abuse, grief, and significant losses have given her a deep understanding of the healing power of creativity and connection, and she is dedicated to sharing those gifts with others. I really can't wait for this discussion. I think you're going to find it heartwarming, heart-wrenching, and so insightful. So let's get right to it. I read through your bio, and the first thing I want to say is, holy Hannah, I am sure your transformation curve, very steep, a very steep curve for you. I do not have children, so I can't speak from losing family that way, but in the reverse direction, in a 3-year window, lost siblings, parents, the whole thing, of course, between pandemic and other events. So when I read your bio and I read through the changes in your life that you've experienced that have brought you to where you are now, they're very, very steep in the transformation curve. And the fact that you've come through and you are so full of kindness and compassion and love, I'm like, wow, this girl, she's got some good, strong inner fortitude and spaciousness to see that even in the darkest of the darkest, there's still light. My darkest of dark. And how do I even see and find the light? And how do I learn to embrace the light, to realize that as hard as the moment is, what's on the other side could be as equally beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm pretty much an open book, so no question is off the table. And I will say that prior to my loss of my son, Brad, I've always been busy and doing things, and I love Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Heal Your Body, and all kinds of spiritual woo-woo things. I like them, and I've read them. And The Four Agreements, oh my gosh, that book, if you haven't read it, is phenomenal. I highly recommend it. I bought like 10 of them and kept them in my gift closet, and I would just give them out to people. You need to read this book. It's just life-changing. But anyhow, I got really busy with my life, and with the opioid epidemic, which I think you pretty much have to be living on under a rock if you don't know about it, if you haven't been affected by it in some way or know somebody or something. But out of 4 kids, I did have one, my Bradley, who became addicted to opiates. And, it was a long journey, and he tried and he tried and he tried, and eventually lost his life in a sober living home in Florida, which at the time, there was very little regulation. Anybody could hang a shingle and say, hey, I got a sober living. And, he called me and he's, Mom, I'm not ready. And he goes, I think I'm going to go to sober living. And I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I think you should. And so he found this sober living, and it was not safe. He died in that sober living. Another young man died, and one of the techs died.
Wow.
In the same sober living. So I often share that story about addiction, like Sometimes people are walking down the sidewalk and you can stumble and you can fall off the sidewalk into the road, and you can get back up and get back on the sidewalk. You'll be okay. Sometimes you can stumble and twist your ankle and you're injured, and you get back up on the sidewalk and you walk with a limp or something. Sometimes you can fall off the sidewalk and get hit by a car, have major damage. Sometimes you can be walking down the sidewalk and somebody comes along and pushes you in front of a Mack truck. And that's what happened to Brad. So I think with that story, it illustrates, like, as humans, we always want to blame. We want to say, this person did it, that person did it, he did it. And I just look at it as, that was his sidewalk story. He was walking down the sidewalk, doing the very best he could, got pushed in front of a Mack truck, and now he's not here. So that my days, I lost my dad when he was young in a car accident. It was like before my senior year of college. And I thought, oh, that's the worst possible thing that anybody could go through, losing your parent at such a young age in a car accident. But then when I lost Brad, I thought, oh my gosh, there's just no, I can't imagine. You're not supposed to die, lose your children before you die. But life was dark, really dark. And I had a friend that had also lost a child, and she said to me, right now you're kind of in shock. It hasn't sunk in all the way, but it gets worse before it gets better. And at first I was like, why is she telling me this? Oh my gosh, this is terrible. But when it got worse, I was thankful that she told me that, because I just kept plugging away. I kept going through the motions of some things, even though I didn't feel it. I didn't want to get out of bed. And, I would tap into, self-help things, meditation, prayer. And I just kept going. And then I found art, and it really changed the way my brain chemistry started to work. So at first, my therapy was helping other people. I got really involved in social movements and being a voice for people that didn't have a voice or were stigmatized or whatever, which is all terrible, but we need voices out there. But it consumed me. And then when I found art, it was like that, okay, now I can finally get back to me. And what I can say is, through that darkness, once you get to the other side, and you will, if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, everything's better. Like, the sunsets are more beautiful. Sitting outside in a warm summer breeze is, you feel things, you see things. And I've learned to appreciate every single day. Now, sometimes I have to practice. Like, we've had some changes at my job that are very stressful, and I had a negative attitude, and one of my friends said to me, why don't you just manifest that tomorrow is going to be a great day at work? And I did, and it was a great day at work.
It's beautiful.
So your mindset, the way you think is so powerful that sometimes we forget that we're in charge of that. I'm in charge of how I feel. I can't blame it on outside circumstances. I know we had a lot of tragedy. We've got some tragedies happening across the seas and in the United States. And I don't watch the news because I don't need to flood my brain with that information, but you can't help but hear about it and see about it. Sometimes you can get caught up in that. Oh, woe is me, the state of the nation, everything's horrible. Or you can say, I I'm sad that that happened, but I'm looking outside right now and the leaves are changing. I'm in Ohio, and they just cut down the cornfields behind me, and I see the pine trees and there's birds flying out there. So why would I want to waste the beauty in this moment by focusing on something that I can't control, I can't really do anything about? And you said something really, really important that I firmly believe is, you know what? Love is the answer. It is the answer.
I
Like, we're
firmly believe
called to
that.
love. Yeah, we're called to love one another. That's what we're called to do.
I think we're not only
So,
called to love one another, we're called truly to love ourselves. And
yes.
I feel here comes the woo-woo. So I feel that we are all from, and call it whatever, your 5D, multi-D dimension, universe, source, God,
Mm-hmm.
Father Sky, Mother Earth, whatever those dimensions are that exceed or are beyond our earthly, what we look at. I believe that we are all from that, a piece of that. So that means each of us is equally gifted the capacity to feel the love for another as well as for yourself. Because if you look at it simple, A plus B equals C, if you're from that place, you're going to that place, and that is what you are made of. That's what your soul, your heart, your essence is made from. Then it's not like my piece is different than your piece. It's presented differently because you're in your body and I'm in my body. You have your earthly experiences. I have my earthly experiences. But at our deepest core, you and I are the same. We are one. We are love. We are from love. We go to love. We will be. That is what we are. You hear it expressed in lots of different ways. Kathy Heller always talks about her mentor, who is a rabbi, who talks about us all being a piece of the masterpiece. So you hear it in lots of different expressions, but the concept is the same. Love is the answer for everything. I don't really care what the question is. If you want to pare it down to really the simplest answer, to me, love is the answer. I don't like to misconstrue that love equals you ignore the fact that there's a lot of things going on in the world. But I feel that love is the answer, that you may feel that you're thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away from some event or some occurrence. And that, when you say I have no control over that, on the outside, sure, it would appear that we have no control, but what we do have control over is ourselves and how do we choose to express ourselves. And if you, just as you say, choose to take your moments and focus on the beauty of the moment, the love in the moment, the higher expression of the moment, that energy that you experience and you share is being reverberated out to the world, to the universe. So even though you may not physically be touching the hand of another with that same energy, somebody is receiving it. And if it means that you change the world one heart at a time through that love, then yes. And to me, I think if you really want to expand what you're able to offer, you have to start at home. My mother used to say things like, charity starts at home.
Right.
And I always took it to mean like clean your room. Clean your room so I don't have to. But now I think that phrase is so accurate. Charity starts at home. Where's your home? Your home is within your heart. And if that's where you start and that's what you develop and really nurture and really lean into, then it becomes very easy to hold love in your heart for others, even though the outside package may not line up with you.
I love what you're saying. And I was thinking, when you said reverberate, the word that I align with is ripple. And my husband's a huge Grateful Dead fan, and Brad loved the Grateful Dead. They have a song called Ripple, and I just looked it up just because I don't know the lyrics by hand, but it says, There's there is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and the dark of night, and if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Ripple in still water, when there is no pebble tossed, no wind to blow. You who choose to lead must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. It's just so deep. Like, their lyrics are so deep, but that ripple, when you do toss the pebble in the water, you can just visualize it. It just goes on and on and on and on. And then if there's something else in the water, it impacts that. If there's
Yes.
something here, it impacts that.
Yes. And then there's a ricochet ripple that gets created.
Yeah.
So it's really phenomenal when I talk to people, and sometimes I'll hear like, well, there's nothing I can do. And I always think to myself, I don't know that I agree with that. I think there is always something we can do. And nothing I can do doesn't equal you have to physically go do something outside of yourself. Something I can do can be as simple as why don't you just start with the kindness of, you're perfect, you're okay, you're enough, you are love. And when you can own that and hold that and believe it, and it's not just words that you tell yourself, like really integrate it deep into your being, then the next thing of how does this ripple out is it's done for you. It just ripples out. So my little piece of this is I started this podcast, Energy of the Untamed Heart, because I really, truly, truly believe that at our core, we have a wildness of joy and passion that's our birthright. We have a capacity to love at a level that is immeasurable on this earth. It is there for all of us. And the difficulty where many of us feel like, oh, that's not for me, oh, that doesn't happen for me, is if you believe the whole world is happening to you and not for you. That's a big piece, of course. But two is we've spent so much of our lives covering things up and building barriers and defending our heart that it's like it's trapped under there. And so it's a little bit like digging through the junk to get to what's at the bottom. And I think that's available for everybody. Everybody has the capacity for that. Now, whether or not one can get there, that I believe has a whole litany of events that to kind of take me back full circle to your description of Brad, which is he was doing pretty good and on the sidewalk and someone pushed him in front of a truck. So that analogy really rings true for me, because I think it's so easy in today's society, we render judgment about, oh, this person is quote unquote broken. And this person, they've gone down some dark path and they can't find their way home and all those things. And I'm not saying that those aren't visually truth, but the capacity one may have to attain whatever level of experiencing love is available. That is not the same thing as, do the events of our day-to-day change or shift that? Of course they do. The other piece that I strongly feel, and this is so hard sometimes to say, but I will say it, not only am I very sciencey and I really quite like science, but I'm also very spiritual and I'm very kind of woo-ish as well. So it's sort of a nice blend. My thing I like to say is I like to show people the connection between science and spirit, because there is a scientific holding to a lot of the conversation that we're having, that if you wanted to get really geeky, we can go down that road. But there's also, for me, there's the spiritual piece that I strongly believe that everybody we interact with, every soul to soul connection that we have in our life is truly not coincidental. It's truly a divinely arranged agreement that two humans will experience as their two souls have an exchange. And I absolutely believe that that is the truth. And what makes it difficult from the human perspective is when that soul agreement comes to a close, and we don't know when the close will be. The close may be, like in your case, losing a child. In my case, losing a sibling. In somebody else's case, maybe a parent, maybe a spouse, maybe the dog. I don't know. But I definitely feel that we have these preordained or capacity for these soul interactions, these soul agreements. And part of the coming through to allow you to accept the love of that window of time, I think that varies person to person. And I think we misconstrue. So you've said it and I've said it, a parent shouldn't be outliving a child. I that's our human thing. Like, okay, that doesn't make sense. This does not compute because we're thinking it through. We're thinking it from our mind. I've given birth to a child and I shouldn't be outliving my child because that's the chronological way it's supposed to go according to science.
Right.
But the reality is, from a soul perspective, from a heart and love perspective, there is an exchange between two souls because there's a lesson to either be given or learned, because we're here to both teach and receive, to give and receive. And there is no constraint about who will that be and how long will that be for. And that I find, for me personally, that's been my big, I don't know, I guess my big angst as I've sort of mentally and emotionally worked through the grief of loss, and then to really understand the gift from the loss is a greater expansion of the capacity for love.
Yes. There are some people that have traumatic events in their lives, and you can choose one of two paths, right? You can choose to expand, or you can choose to hit the wall and not move forward. And I've seen both. My whole belief system is I've hit a lot of, like, losing Brad. Yeah, it's a huge one. Then I lost Brian, who was Brad's sponsor, who became like a son to us. And after I lost him, I hit that brick wall again and had to push through it. And at that point, I thought, how can this be happening? What is the thing? And now I look, hindsight is always really good if you use it correctly. And I look at Brian as a gift that was given to us, especially me, because I don't sleep well. And he would, see that I was on the phone or whatever, and he'd call me, "How you doing, Mama?" And he was a true gift, not just to me, but to everyone that he touched. And so I do miss him as well. And then last year I lost my grandchild. So I've been hit with a lot of grief and loss, but I have tools. We all have tools that we can use. Maybe art or creativity isn't your bag, but there's numerous things you can do. You can, work with animals, or, knit, or tinker on mechanics, or yard work, or gardening. Anything really creative that you're doing helps. And I know this is the geeky part. It helps form those new neural pathways in your brain, because you're never going to lose the old ones. They don't just dissipate. They don't go away. But what you can do is form new pathways and strengthen those pathways by repeating. I get up and I meditate and I pray, and I have cards that I use and I journal, do futuristic thing. I do a lot of artwork because I believe that we're to be happy in this lifetime, or whatever you want to call this. And I also believe that I know we are, it's not just a belief, it's a knowing, we're all energetic beings, right? And energy doesn't die. Energy keeps going. And I feel all of my loved ones that have moved on, I feel their energy at certain times in my life. You can feel it. You can almost see it. I talked about like looking for the signs, right? And there's signs all around us. It's just, how open are you to see them? How receptive are you? That's what meditation really helps with, is pushing out all those thoughts that no longer serve you or that might be blocking you off so that you can receive.
Yeah.
And it's been life-changing for me.
Yeah. I love a
Life-changing.
couple of things that you're saying, which is, again, a big piece of. So when I started and I thought, oh, I'm just going to talk about, the ways we block our heart as part of my podcast. And I see it sort of morphing a little bit into conversating, having conversation about, that.
Yeah.
How, I know, right? How each of us as a creative being, because as an energetic being, we are all here to be creative, to create pathways for ourselves and others, to become receptive for the messages, for the love that's being shared with us. And by removing the blockages to the receiving of it, we're able to show that which is already within us. It's just being brought out to the surface by a variety of whatever one chooses. For you, it's been your artwork that has allowed you to tap into the language of your heart, to receive the messages that you need to receive so that you can change and grow and expand. And it's very different for each of us. And I don't think there's any one way. Like for me personally,
Right.
I'm really geeky about numbers. I love numbers. I'm a numerologist and I love the energy of numbers. And so that for me is an interesting way to help receive information and messages. But I have other things that are in my creative end of me and other modalities that I engage in to receive information. So I also live on a farm and I have horses, and they're highly energetic beings. And a lot of my tapping into my heart space and understanding that piece of me has come from my exchange of my time with the horses.
Yeah.
The other piece that I find really fascinating is all of these different potential energetic modalities: journaling to the future, drawing, tapping, meditating, all of these different ways of hearing the message that our heart has to share with us. I really find fascinating. It also is an exchange of what we as human beings are offered, because we're given five senses, most of us, as a human being, and our soul resides in this human body. And we are meant to use our physical bodies to help move energy in our day. So we have all the energy all around us, of course, but then we have the energy within us. And it is an exchange, a portal, a gateway, throughway, whatever you want to call it. And our way of conveying that is, for us as humans here in Earth School, is most often through some kind of an activity that engages our five senses. So for me, for example, I hear you speak of your art. Well, that is not only physical because you're using your hands to do something, but you're also using your vision, and you're also using your emotion, and you're using how you receive your messages to then convey your creativity, which in turn is not only serving for yourself, but for others. Now you share your artwork with others, perhaps, and now they're able to hear and read the messages through the visual. So I love that you've discovered that this is a language that your heart communicates through to you. I find it very interesting. It comes to us in lots of different ways.
I'm just going crazy right now, but we were watching a documentary on TV last night, and it was about the brain. And it talked about, like, when someone is blind, they lose that ability, that sense. but then their hearing sense is magnified. Like they hear things that we don't hear.
Right.
And then they had this other young man. He got beat up really badly after leaving a karaoke night or something like that, and he had severe brain trauma. And afterwards, it unlocked this number genius ability in his brain. And he can see numbers, he can see scale, he can see, so he has done architectural work. He's an artist that can draw perfect circles and lines that are like perfect, like a spirograph. And I think there's so much in our brain that we don't recognize, we don't know, we don't tap into. And I think that's what, when you focus in on something like art, for example, and you keep practicing it, you can unlock more and more and more magic. And then you said you're a numbers numerology, and I went to a numerology class at this psychic ability. It's a community of all psychics in New York, Lilydale, it's called. And they had this numerology class. So we did some exercises, and I discovered that I am a number 4.
Very good. Yeah.
Stability. And, I crave that stability, and I can see that in my life, because one of the things that I kind of want to do is venture off and just go full time as an artist and an entrepreneur. But I have this really good job, and it pays very well, and I have stability with it.
Why can't you do both?
I do both right now.
Yeah.
But eventually I just want to do the art, because there's so
Sure.
much more of me that I can give.
Yes.
But I can see how that number 4, keeps me rooted in the
Yes.
stability, and that's okay, because that's who I am.
Yes.
Right? What's your number? I'm just curious.
I am, so numerology, you have your ruling number, which is from your birth date. Some people call it
Yes.
your life path number. That pretty much is your descriptor of your personality, like how you tend to walk through the world. You also have what's referred to as a contract card. That is sort of like the description of your task or job, not job, career, but how you will execute your purpose in the world. And that's a different number.
Different
So
number.
yeah, and it's based on the day that you're born. I happen to be a ruling number 7, and I'll give you a quickie on that. And
I was going to say you were a 7.
I am a 7.
I just knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah. So what's really interesting about the 4 and the 7 is the 4 and the 7 both lie or reside in what's called the physical plane in the energy grid. So we have a physical plane, emotional plane, mental plane, spiritual plane. And the 4 is absolutely a number that loves stability and structure, both physically, like in your immediate environment, remaining grounded, centered. Think coffee table, 4 solid legs. And so people who are 4s do well with some kind of a structure. They like to know all the ducks are in a row kind of thing. But they're also very clear that the 4, to me, the 4 is also about the foundational structure of the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars being the alignment of your physical, your emotional, spiritual, and your mental. Like all 4 pillars need to be solid and aligned and harmonic in order for you to up level to that next number, let's say, in the grid. So it doesn't shock me that you say I'm a 4. I gotta have feeling you were in that physical zone, because you're very, very grounded, super grounded. So it's really interesting to me, because I think there's room for both. So what I hear you saying, I like my day career because it facilitates my ability to do these other things. But I also want to do my creative side of me, which is through my art, and bring that forward. And you can absolutely do both. And you can probably start with one and build to the other. And sometime along, when we're done, you're going to give me your birthday, and I'm going to give you some information after the podcast.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You'll be like, what? It's one of those rabbit holes. Like once you start digging, you're like, wow, there's a lot in there. So very, very, very interesting. But so it's all in how we choose to use it. So it's really fascinating. So tell me about your art.
Tell the listeners about your number 7.
Oh, my number 7. Okay. So the number 7. Yeah. So 7 is a fascinating number. 7 is a number of spirituality. 7 is a number of inspired action, basically like not needing to know everything, just take the next step, follow the breadcrumbs. That's kind of the 7. 7 is associated definitely with a number of faith. Like you don't need to know, you don't need to control it. You just can kind of go forward, take the inspired action and just do the thing. The difficulty on the flip side of a 7, and I'll give you the quickie, is we know there's a range of energies within a number. There's a low end, a medium end, and a high end. So if you get stuck in, for example, the lower end for me of a 7, those are windows of indecision. Do I this or do I that? Oh my gosh, I don't know whether I should do A or B, so I just won't do anything. That's an example of what happens to a 7 on the low end, is caught in indecision, feeling stuck. Because the 7, again, resides in the physical plane, how do most 7s become unstuck? They move physically. They need movement. They need to walk. They need to go. They need to be active. They need to physically move their body to shift the stuckness, which is very true for me personally. And the 7, if you look historically, the 7 is quite a significant number. Not just like, oh, we have 7 days of the week and we have 7 major planetary planets that rotate at, certain intervals. But there's a lot of, if you go through historically, there's a lot of connection about various cultures who things occur in 7. 7, there were 7 tribes and 7 babies and 7 days, a new baby every 7 days. And it just depends on the culture that you're studying. But 7 is a pretty significant energetic number. So it's kind of fascinating. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yes.
So yeah, we could talk all day like this, truly. A little bit about where you see your heart's vision moving forward with your drawing, and how can people find you, and what's the next step?
So I have participated in 2 books that actually became international best-selling books. The first book is called The Creative Life Book, and the second book is called Radical Self-Love.
I love this.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yes. So I can give you a link to those. I don't have it offhand right now, but I have a link to those. They can find it in your description.
I'll put it in the show notes.
I also have a print offer and I put together 4 paintings that were divinely inspired. They're all energetic pieces, and you can pick your favorite, because I truly believe that sometimes it's nice to have a physical piece that you're looking at every day to remind you of, all the possibilities that you have. One of the pieces is called Divinely Inspired. One is called Abundantia. One is called Hope All Around. And the other one is called Hand of God, reaching into the turbulent water. So those are available at dawnboveprints.com. And you can take a look at them and read a little bit more in depth about the art. But that kind of gives you a feel of, what you were talking about. I am energetically inspired to create these certain pieces, and people connect with them. Like, for example, when I made the Hand of God, I made the turbulent waters because I was going through some turbulence at that time, and it was just a collage piece, and I didn't even see the hand going into the water. And I posted it on social media, and somebody goes, "Oh my gosh, it's like the hand of God reaching into the turbulent water." And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even see that. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'll call it.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is no coincidence. There is in astrology a particular geometric configuration that shows up in some charts, and it's called the finger of God, or Yod, Y-O-D, Yod, the finger of God.
Mhm.
And it's a very specific geometric alignment within the chart, and it has a very specific meaning. So when you said, I didn't realize I even drew it, and somebody said, oh my gosh, it's the hand of God, my mind right away, I'm like, oh, she's got Yod going down in her picture. So again, this is no coincidence at all.
Yeah. I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Yeah.
It's
There's so much that is synchronistic, that, as you say, if we can just be receivers, if we could just be spacious and open, and really not just open, like open to receive a message, but open to the possibility of receiving information and everything else about it, without like, it needs to look like this and it needs to show up like that.
Yeah.
And well, because it doesn't fit my idea of what it needs to look like, it couldn't possibly be. And if we're able to let that piece go and be open, the messages to come through, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Wow. What a spectacular hour to sit and chat with you, Dawn. I love this.
I know. Wow,
I
it's
love
just
this.
flown by like that.
Like that. So good. I'm going to type all your
Yeah.
things in the show notes for everybody so they can reach out and see your work and all your other offers that might be available. And I just can't thank you enough for sharing with me and taking the time, and just great conversation. So good.
Yeah, really good.
I feel so blessed that
Awesome.
I have the opportunity to chat with people like this. What a powerful discussion, and I love this message. Just keep going. It's always darkest before the light, but you will see light again, most brightly than you could ever imagine. Life is a journey. It is our responsibility to seek the light. And if you need help on your journey, reaching out is a sign of strength. So please, reach out. You can find Dawn at her Instagram address I will put in the show notes for you. Her work is a reflection of her soulful spirit and a celebration of the human experience. If you honor your divine spirit, pick up one of her prints at dawnbovetprints.com. She welcomes connections and collaborations with fellow seekers and dreamers at dawnbovetart.com. I think what really hits home for me from this conversation is the awareness that there is always light through the darkness. There's no shame in asking for help and support, and having unconditional acceptance of the journey. So if you found this episode helpful for you, or perhaps for someone who might need to hear this, please tag them, invite them to subscribe for more guest episodes. You just never know who needs to hear this information. It might not hit home deeply for you, but it could very well save somebody's life or honor their journey. Feel free to follow me or join my private Facebook Energetics group. I'll leave you the link in the show notes or at the website foxdenenergetics.com. As always, I thank you for your time and support here on the podcast, sending you so much love.